Hello and welcome into another edition of Musings from the Mountains. I am your host, Keenan Cummings, managing editor for WVSports.com.
And I'm Jared Serre, staff writer for WVSports.com.
Almost got you on a false start there.
Yeah, of course. Super Bowl week, it's on the mind.
Yeah, it is. West Virginia had winning on the mind. Went to Lubbock, found a way to win a game against a top 10 team on the road. First time that's happened for West Virginia since 2016 when they went to Virginia and got a win. First time it's happened in a conference game in quite a while longer. I think it was Villanova, 2010. A quick look at the records. Might need to double check that, but I'm pretty sure it's accurate. So obviously they've had opportunities. You have those opportunities in the Big 12. West Virginia got it done. Second time that they've now beaten Texas Tech on the season, which I'm pretty familiar with how they formulate the net rankings. I would think West Virginia will probably be over Texas Tech now. Considering they've swept them, they have about identical records, and West Virginia is now 5-5 in quadrant one games. But kicking back to what we're looking at with this one, what stood out to you, Jared? I think when you talk about this game, just for me on the surface, it was a total team win, as cliche as that sounds.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, the obvious, thing to point out here is, Sean McNeil obviously led the team in scoring. 26 points, nothing to it's just a hell of a performance from Sean McNeil. Really, he talked in the post game about how coming in last season he was kind of looked at as this shooter, this sniper coming in off the bench. We're seeing him be a much more complete player this year. Putting the ball on the ground, he's not afraid to drive. That's a big takeaway from this one. But yeah, truly a team effort. You got, in addition to McNeil, you got Deuce McBride going on a tear again, 20 points. Derek Culver, 15 points. Solid performance for West Virginia. They really seem to be developing an identity for the first time since 2021 began, really, I would say.
Yeah, and you look at this. I mean, you talked about Sean McNeil getting 26 points. West Virginia needed those 26 points. Taz Sherman didn't suit up. Kind of a surprise before the game. Kind of injured himself in practice. A groin was questionable. I think once we got about, to the 15-minute mark of the second half, you pretty much realized he wasn't going to be playing. So they were able to go on the road, not only beat a top 10 team, but you're down 3 scholarship players now if you consider the 2 guys that left. And I'm not trying to harp on Oscar or what happened to Isaiah. I think Huggins addressed that pretty frankly in the post game. They're ready to move forward and talk about what they have now. But still, I mean, going on the road without Taz Sherman, who thought West Virginia would find a way to win this game? And they only not only just won this game, they really kind of controlled it from start to finish. Had a few lapses, but they were either led or were tied for all but 142 of this. I think it speaks volumes what the team could do. I want to give a shout out to 2 players that aren't going to get a lot of notoriety because of their numbers, but Gabe Osabuoham was absolutely huge in the second half, especially on the defensive end. And in the first half, I thought Jordan McCabe, he really ran the team well. Got the offense moving, and he really picked them up when Deuce McBride was out of the game. I thought that was as good as West Virginia's looked offensively in spurts really this entire year. So solid effort out of those guys. Looking at what West Virginia's got ahead, you're 14-5 now, 7-3 in the Big 12, 7-3. West Virginia has now won, I believe, 5 of their first 6 games out of the COVID break. So really everything has been going pretty well for West Virginia. Obviously, doesn't get any easier. It never gets any easier in this league. You got to turn around and play Oklahoma at home, who you're looking for some revenge on. You're able to pull that off against Kansas. This will be a third-ranked team in a row. Oklahoma's going to be a challenge. But for now, West Virginia's got a few days to rest up. Might be able to get Taz Sherman back. You look at this team, I mean, when you look at where you think this team sets for the NCAA tournament right now, where would you put them? What line would you put them on, Jared?
Yeah, honestly, I think this team is really, they've had a hell of a last couple games, last couple weeks. They really needed. I look at this team; they are so much more well-rounded. There's not a time where I sit and watch them and I go, oh, I'm worried about this lineup, or I'm worried that this is going to happen. They seem to be really kind of battening down the hatches and figuring everything out. But with that being said, I still really don't know, come tournament time, really where this team is. And I think that's a big part of that is because, the schedule, we still really don't know. West Virginia has 4 games to make up, including 2 against arguably the top team in the country, the Baylor Bears. I mean, obviously, I think if you don't play those games, if you're West Virginia, I think you're definitely a higher ranked team. I don't think West Virginia has much of a chance at winning one of those games, let alone both of those games. And that's no knock on West Virginia. Baylor is just such a good team. Um, but I mean, we really don't know. They've got this weekend. They're playing Oklahoma this weekend. Then they've got about a week off because of the Baylor games. Then they play at Texas, at TCU. Those likely wins. Kansas State also, so they could win on a high note. It just really depends on the rescheduling of the 2 Baylor games, the TCU game from the beginning of the year, and I believe it was Oklahoma State was the other one.
Yeah, I think right now I feel pretty good about where West Virginia's at. I really do. I think that this is a team that's hitting its stride at the right time. You throw Taz Sherman back in that mix, and this is a dangerous club. I'd probably see them on the 3 line right now. I mean, if you're seeing the NCAA tournament today, obviously there's a lot of movement. You look at this West Virginia team. I think the thing that stands out to me is, for all the complaining, all the hand wringing, and things that has happened this year about a lot of different issues. See, this team has 5 losses, and all 5 are quadrant 1 losses. There is a such thing as a good loss in college basketball. You're rewarded for it in a sense. So I do think that, if you're going to lose some games, West Virginia's lost some challenging ones, and you're 5-5 in quadrant 1 games, and you still has said, as you mentioned, Texas, 2 Baylor games. I mean, you've still got more chances. You might end up with one of the top 3 schedules in the entire country by the time this thing's said and done. And if you can get to 10, 11, 12 wins in the Big 12, you're looking pretty good come tournament time. Enough with basketball, though. Moving on to football, West Virginia has filled its assistant role. It actually happened, formally today, but it was pretty much done last week. ShaDon Brown from Louisville brought him over. He spent some time at Colorado as well, and at a few other places. Wofford was a school he'd been at. He's a guy that I think West Virginia liked a lot because there's that connection, that Kentucky connection. He's from Danville, same area as Neil Brown, and he's an ace recruiter. Speaking with people that cover Louisville, something that I kept hearing is, a way that was phrased to me that I liked kind of the way it was phrased is he's always on the tongues of recruits. Recruits are talking about him a lot, and his connection, the way he can build connections with kids. And I think that matters here. I think it's a good hire looking at what he's done from a positional standpoint as well. Kind of the next ring up the ladder for him. No official title was given in the release yet, but Pete Thamel told us that it's going to be a co-defensive coordinator / defensive backs role, which makes sense. I mean, probably for what he's going to make. So West Virginia's filled out the staff. I think 2 good hires, two guys that I think is going to bring a lot of energy for West Virginia on the recruiting trail and in their position rooms. Do you have any thought on that as well, Jared?
Yeah, I agree 100%. And losing a guy like Jamal Adai, great recruiter, great coach. You need a high energy guy to come in and, fill both of those roles, especially if you really want to compete in the Big 12. And for where West Virginia is now, I think bringing in ShaDon Brown, excellent fit.
Well, that's our show today. Thank you for tuning in again. We'll be back here soon. Probably be back Saturday after the Oklahoma game. So strap it up. Get ready for another one. It's hoop season. We're deep into it, and the NCAA tournament will be here before you know it. And it looks like West Virginia's pretty much punched their ticket. So thanks for tuning in again. This has been another edition of Musings from the Mountains.